I don't know about you guys, but I feel like 2021 has been a pretty rough year for Yu-Gi-Oh! Product releases. The only two core sets we've gotten, Blazing Vortex and Lightning Overdrive, were mostly underwhelming. Don't get me wrong, they do have some highlights, but man, these sets were pretty disappointing, and the world premieres especially were not that exciting. You also had sets like Ghosts from the Past, which there was a lot of misinformation around that set, but even disregarding the misinformation, I feel like that set was not as good as it could have been. The structure decks that we've gotten, Freezing Chains and the Egyptian God decks, were also pretty underwhelming. At least I feel like that's how most of the player base reacted to them. Ancient Guardians had some cool new archetypes, but at the end of the day, they didn't end up seeing that much play. The Reptile archetype did see a ton of experimentation, but when it came to tournaments, they weren't as good as people thought they might be. That brings us to King's Court. Now this set releases in about 2 weeks, and Konami revealed every single card in it yesterday on their card database. Now King's Court had a lot of hype. It's basically the successor to Toon Chaos from last year, which was a fantastic set for competitive and casual players alike, and it's also supposed to be one of the bigger releases of 2021. So how do I feel about King's Court after seeing these reveals? Well, the honest truth is that I think that King's Court did live up to the hype, and I think this will be the biggest release of 2021 so far by a long shot. We have brand new world premiere cards that are very interesting. We have some great OCG imports that people have been asking for a while, and we have some big reprints, things like Evolzar Dolka, things like Lightning Storm, and things like Scrap Twin Dragon, and so much more. King's Court is an excellent set, which is pretty good because I feel like Konami needed this set to be perfect, and I do think they got pretty darn close. In today's video, I'm not going to talk so much about the OCG imports or the reprints that were in the set, but I will go over all 10 of the world premiere cards and give my opinion on them. Now you can see all of the new world premieres and OCG imports and TCG reprints on the Yu-Gi-Oh card database, which I will link in the description below, but for today's video, I'm going to be using the graphics from Yu-Gi-Oh News TCG on Twitter. They post all sorts of Yu-Gi-Oh news as you would expect, and they make some pretty great stuff, so make sure to go check them out if you guys enjoy the graphics that you'll see in today's video. But let's go through all 10 world premiere cards and I'll give you guys my thoughts. First up, we have Arcana Triumph Joker, a level 10 light warrior effect monster that says if this card is in your hand or graveyard, you can send one Queen's Knight, King's Knight, and Jack's Knight from your hand and or face-up monster zone to the graveyard, special summon this card. This card gains 500 attack times the combined number of cards in both players' hands. You can discard one card, destroy all face-up cards your opponent controls with the same type, monster, spell, or trap as the discarded card. Now that effect is not a quick effect, which does make this card a little worse, but man does this card look good. And you haven't seen the new support yet, but it's pretty darn easy to summon Queens, Kings, and Jack's Knight with all of these new cards. I think this card is going to be a pretty good boss monster. It can get to quite a lot of attack points fairly easily, but let's move on to the other cards, which might be a bit more exciting because some of these cards can be splashed in different types of decks, where this one would be like in a dedicated Arcana Knight deck. Joker's Knight was super hyped up by Konami in the set description. They even compared it to Magician Souls, which obviously is a very strong card. Joker's Knight is a level 5 light warrior effect monster that says you can send one Queen's Knight, King's Knight, or Jack's Knight from your deck to the graveyard, special summon this card from your hand, and if you do, this card's name becomes the sent monster's name until the end phase. During the end phase, if this card is in your graveyard, you can target one other light warrior monster in your graveyard, shuffle it into your deck, and if you do, add this card to your hand. You can only use each effect of Joker's Knight once per turn. So yes, you can play this card in an Arcana Knight deck, and you'll probably want to play a full 3 copies, but this card, like Magician Souls, has a ton of applications outside of its own archetype. Joker's Knight is a warrior monster that you can special summon for free every single turn. What's really cool is that you only have to play 1 copy of any of those Knight cards if you wanted to splash this card into whatever deck you happened to be playing, because in the end phase, this card adds itself back to the hand and shuffles that garnet back into the deck. So Joker's Knight does give you a lot of value over time. You could use it for link summons, you could use it for synchro summons, you could use it for whatever you wanted. I know Konami in their set description said you could use this card in an Egyptian god deck, and that is kind of true, but obviously the card will be a lot better in decks that don't play the Egyptian gods. I know if you want to play the Egyptian gods that you'd probably play this card, but let's be real here, Joker's Knight has way more applications than just using it for a tribute summon. That being said, I don't think this card is as good as Magician's Souls, but it is a very powerful card, and I expect to see this card at tournaments very soon. Imperial Bower, I think that is a level 4 light warrior effect monster that says, if you control no other monsters, you can tribute this card. Take 2 different monsters from your deck among Queen's Knight, King's Knight, and or Jack's Knight, and either add to your hand or special summon each monster. You can only use this effect of Imperial Bower once per turn. So this is basically a rescue rabbit for the Arcana Knight archetype, which is obviously very good. It pretty much has no drawbacks. Yes, you have to control no other monsters, but I don't really see that as that big of a drawback. Joker's Straight is an insane normal spell card that says discard 1 card, special summon 1 Queen's Knight from your deck, add 1 King's Knight or Jack's Knight from your deck to your hand, then immediately after this effect resolves, you can normal summon 1 monster. You cannot special summon monsters from the extra deck for the rest of this turn, except light warrior monsters. During the end phase, if this card is in your graveyard, you can target 1 light warrior monster in your graveyard, shuffle it into the deck, and if you do, add this card to your hand. You can only use each effect of Joker's Straight once per turn. So with Joker's Straight, as long as you discard 1 card, you special summon that Queen Knight, and then you add that King's Knight to your hand, and then immediately normal summon it to then special summon the Jack's Knight right from your deck. That is a very easy way to put a bunch of monsters on your board, and now you can kind of see why Arcana Triumph Joker is so easy to summon. You have cards like this that make it quite easy to flood your board with the Arcana Knight monsters. Face Card Fusion is a new normal spell that says fusion summon 1 light warrior fusion monster from your extra deck using monsters from your hand or field as fusion material. If you control Queen's Knight, King's Knight, or Jack's Knight, you can use 1 monster from your deck as fusion material. You can only activate 1 face card fusion per turn. So this is a very easy way to summon Arcana Knight Joker. Arcana Knight Joker is honestly not the worst card in the world, it just was pretty difficult to summon before this new support. Thunder Speed Summon is a new quick play spell that says during the main or battle phase, immediately after this effect resolves, normal summon 1 level 10 monster, or if you control Queen's Knight, King's Knight, and Jack's Knight, you can apply this effect instead. Add 1 level 10 non-dark monster with question mark attack from your deck to your hand, then immediately after this effect resolves, you can normal summon 1 level 10 monster. You can only activate 1 Thunder Speed Summon per turn. So obviously you want to use this card when you do control Queens, Kings, and Jack's Knight, and when you do that, you can add that Arcana Triumph Joker to your hand and then immediately normal summon it, which could be pretty good. The Arcana Triumph Joker will likely have a lot of attack points. Keep in mind here that this archetype has a lot of cards that add things back to your hand. We've already seen the Joker's Knight and Joker's Straight, which can add themselves back to your hand in the end phase. You'll have a lot of hand advantage in this deck, which makes a card like Arcana Triumph Joker very appealing. Joker's Wild is a new normal trap card that says during the main or battle phase, send 1 spell from your deck to the graveyard that specifically lists all of Queen's Knight, King's Knight, and Jack's Knight. This effect becomes that spell's effect when that card is activated. During the end phase, if this card is in your graveyard, you can target 1 light warrior monster in your graveyard, shuffle into the deck, and if you do, add this card to your hand. You can only use each effect of Joker's Wild once per turn. So this potentially gives you 3 extra copies of all of the spells we've looked at in today's video so far. Joker's Wild might seem kind of slow because it is a trap card, but I think it could be a pretty valuable addition to an Arcana Knight deck. The final Arcana Knight card is Court of Cards, a new continuous trap that says if you control no monsters or only control Queens, Kings, and or Jack's Knight, you can special summon 1 Queen's Knight, King's Knight, or Jack's Knight from your hand or graveyard. You can banish up to 1 each Queen's Knight, King's Knight, and or Jack's Knight from your hand hand and or graveyard, draw the same number of cards you banished. You can only use one Court of Cards effect per turn and only once that turn. So it's like a Call of the Haunted that also can give you extra draws if you want to banish monsters out of your graveyard. Court of Cards is a pretty great recovery card in two different ways, and I think for that reason it will be played in this deck. It seems like with these 8 new Arcana Knight cards, you'll want to play it as some sort of slower controlling based deck because these cards do have a lot of value. You can summon a bunch of cards every single turn, you can add cards to your hand every single turn, and over time you'll probably be able to outgrind your opponent. Making the Arcana Knight cards playable is pretty much impossible, but I think Konami did a very good job with these new Arcana Knight support cards. I don't know if it'll be a tier 1 deck necessarily, but these cards are very good, and I feel like this deck has a lot of potential, which is honestly pretty weird to say about the Arcana Knights, which have never really been a competitive deck at any point in Yu-Gi-Oh's history. There are 2 new world premieres that are not related to the Arcana Knights though. So we have Magnet Induction, a new normal spell for Magnet Warriors of all decks. This card says if you control a Magnet Warrior monster whose original level is 4 or lower, special summon one level 4 or lower Magnet Warrior monster from your deck with a different name than the cards you control. Also, for the rest of this turn after this card resolves, Magnet Warrior and Magna Warrior monsters you control cannot be destroyed by battle or your opponent's card effects. You can only activate one Magnet Induction per turn. So it's kind of like a mini Ties of Brethren, which I do like a lot. Will this one card be enough to make Magnet Warriors a competitive deck? Absolutely not, but it is a pretty cool piece of support. And finally, we have XYZ Hyper Cannon, a new continuous trap. This is very random. Let's take a look at what it does. You must control XYZ Dragon Cannon or a fusion monster that lists XYZ Dragon Cannon as material to activate this card's effect. This card's effect depends on whose turn it is. If it's your turn, you can target one of your banished Union monsters, place it on the bottom of your deck, and if you do, draw one card. If it's your opponent's turn, you can discard any number of cards, then target the same number of cards your opponent controls, destroy those cards. You can only use this effect of XYZ Hyper Cannon once per turn. This card, if it works, is pretty darn insane, but I don't think it'll make XYZ Dragon Cannon worth playing. You could use this card with EWXYZ Dragon Catapult Cannon, but realistically, I don't think that's going to happen. I think if you wanted to play this card, you would actually play it with the true XYZ Dragon Cannon, but is that better than just playing ABCs? Probably not, but this card is pretty interesting. Anyway, that was all of the world premiere cards from King's Court. Make sure to check out the Yu-Gi-Oh card database, which I will link in the description below, to see all of the OCG imports and all of the reprints that they put into the set. I hope you guys enjoyed today's video. I'll see you later. Goodbye.